One thing the Jaguar was sorely missing by 1995 was a quality 3D racing game to contend with the competing consoles, which were quickly amassing their own library of 3D racing games. Well, who better to come to the rescue than Tiertex Design out of Macclesfield, England? Wait, who the hell is Tiertex Design? They must have been some kind of no-name studio that popped up to design Jaguar games, because when was the last time you heard the name Tiertex Design? Be honest. Well, Tiertex by 1995 actually had a pretty serious list of credits to their name. They started on the British home computers like the Spectrum and ended up developing decent ports of Impossible Mission, Gauntlet, Heroes of the Lance, and even Ace of Aces on the Sega Master System. They also developed not one but two Jaguar games, a port of Flashback and the original Supercross 3D. We'll get to Flashback another day, however. So ultimately, by 1995, Tiertex were just a no-name studio who had never developed a video game before. The difference is they hadn't really worked on a lot of original properties. They were mostly just a porting powerhouse. So how did Supercross 3D fare in their hands? Well, you start off with a reasonably attractive front end and some okay music. Nothing too offensive so far. I actually really miss these kind of textured menu screens. Additionally, there's a decent amount of options, and although it's a bit painful to enter a name for your racer, you can just enter and be done with it. You can practice a track, play a single race, or participate in tournament mode, which stitches all of the individual races together as you head around the USA trying to become the CEO of motocross or whatever if you win. I have no idea how motocross works. If you play a practice track, you might think to yourself, hey, this isn't bad. The ground is a bit bland outside of the track itself, but everything mostly looks alright. The Jumbotron is a nice touch, and the textured crowds don't look too much like garbage. After a couple of laps, you also start to get a feel for the control, and it's pretty fun. You've got high hopes. Then you start tournament mode, and the colostomy bag explodes in your face. I cannot explain to you how hard this game is to play due to the absolutely abysmal frame rate. What was actually pretty playable in practice mode becomes a constant battle with dropped frames to not go flying off the track and into the mud, crashing and losing valuable seconds that the cheating anus AI gobbles up like Jiminy Glick eating candy. There's a reference for people my age. If you persevere and keep playing, you actually start to kind of adjust, especially if you get into first place. But the moment someone else appears on the screen with you, then the frame rate attempts to flush itself down the toilet again. It's really, really frustrating for the frame rate to kill what is otherwise a reasonably solid racing game that is actually theoretically fun to play, just not in practice. The other issue is that as much as the core gameplay is solid, the tracks themselves are the same thing, just a slightly different brown, and arranged to make it look like you're on a different track. But it's just a remix with a different colour. By the end of tournament mode, you're absolutely bored of seeing this. Even a different colour on the flat shaded stadium architecture would have helped break up the monotony, but you don't even get that. Much has been said about how bad Supercross 3D looks, but honestly I don't see it. In practice, racing games on other consoles at the time didn't look a huge amount better than this. The difference was that they had a good frame rate and weren't totally hamstrung by that. In practice mode, as mentioned, you can see what this game should be running like. Even then, it's not perfect. However, the 3D engine is doing things like driving the Jumbotron, applying a really big texture map around the outside of the stadium, and displaying some reasonably competent geometry. There isn't anything that really looks aesthetically terrible to me. The biggest issue is the abysmal frame rate. Really, that's all there is to Supercross 3D. You can save your game while playing tournament mode if you get motion sick from the frame rate and need to take a break, but you can finish the whole thing in around an hour and a half. Once you've done that, there isn't really much to do. There's no two-player option, and really all you've got left at that point is just trying to get better times on the tracks you've already played seemingly 4 million times at that point. As I mentioned, I am realistic about the horrifically bad frame rate that covers this entire game like bright red eczema, but can't totally condemn it. There are the bones of a decent racing game in here, and I was able to finish it without giving up out of sheer disgust, so it's really not that bad. The biggest issues it has are the length and the choppiness of tournament mode, which is where the bulk of the game is. This is reasonably nice looking diet racing with more dropped frames and an optical dispenser with palsy, but isn't entirely disposable. It's worth at least one play, but only diehards would come back for repeated play sessions.